Good evening and welcome to From the Left with Stephen Leon. I'm running for Congress in Virginia's 8th District. And tonight's show, just gonna kind of go over what's going on in the week, some of the things that I've experienced on social media. I'm gonna try, I might, I don't know how much more that I can invest personally, getting a teleprompter. I'd said in the previous show that I would try and work out like some whatever items, especially going after the incumbent with some of the things, and then being able to chop that up and then put it on Twitter or something like that. I'm gonna try like with what resources I do have, and again, I'll follow up with the write-in situation. I filed an appeal and I got a letter, what is it, like a week and a half after I sent it, or even 2 weeks, saying that they need another 7 days because they're short-staffed. So, I mean, there's learning experiences there and everything, but, I'm always, I got to work with what I have, you know what I mean? I'm running against big money. Not that necessarily PACs and lobbyists are inherently wrong. It's just how everything is spent into that and how 70% of that is just ruling the elections and the time spent for candidates. So that's a positive. If I win this thing, that I'm not going to be out there tap dancing or anything like that for 70% of my time. Challenge there is everyone else's. But until we were to pass the American Anti-Corruption Act, which has a 90% approval across party lines, approximately. It's a little more on the left. It's like 87, and then maybe 83. It's a little higher than that. You'd have to check the numbers on that. So, yeah, I want to thank the positive comments that I got on Twitter earlier this week by a guy named John. I wish I could pronounce his first name properly with 2 dots over the O. More Agnostos, and then Carol Kennan. And this was a thread that started off the incumbent Don Byers post about medications and how the Biden administration is they're just, it's with the 2-year anniversary of it, they're just promoting it. And I received a Hill article that said they're telling us half truths. And I hope this creates a example of what I'm able to do on the left and call out those that I have voted for and then find a balance. And then hopefully that'll open the door to the right to also hear that. One of the big things I came up with is, from the left, let's rescind the ban on assault weapons for the abortion rights. Think about that. I can go more into detail about the balance of the federal protection and states advocation. That's a little bit different. You know what I mean? When you're running for the Congress, which is federal, I do live in Virginia, so I have that state's example with me. But as far as legislating that into law, that would be nice, but I can already see it. Our Virginia state model just getting chopped down to a federal minimum. So going back to that post on legalizing drugs, this is not a partisan issue. You know what I mean? There's a drug addiction, even if it's prescribed medication or whatever it might be. It's not. If anything was partisan, at least from the major parties, it would be about the general welfare, fiscal responsibility balance. And when we're talking about illicit drugs, so drugs like cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine is actually legal at small amounts for narcolepsy, but things like heroin and cocaine, those things aren't going to be legal. But even then, all drugs are legal in some form. Novocaine, Adderall, pain meds, Dilaudid, things like that. So mushrooms is legal here in Virginia now, and I only know that because I vape. I have stopped smoking before, and so I go in there and I just noticed I was like, mushrooms are legal now, and marijuana is legal. And what that has, the human beings' desire to pursue mood altering chemicals. I've got coffee right here and stuff like that. That's kind of where I draw the line, nicotine and caffeine right now. So but I'm not going to get into, what they say, like no more than 500 milligrams a day, depending on certain things. Maybe certain bodies can handle a little more or not. But when it comes to those the thread that I was able to, I want to thank again some of the data that I didn't see. Some from the quotas that the DEA had. There's right on my website. You can see that I don't support a war on drugs. In fact, there never was a war on drugs. It's just this manufactured ideology that started from unconstitutional ideology that started with Johnson and the Nixon and so forth. And here in Arlington, in the local politics, we have things like drug courts, and a lot of places do now too, where it's a supply and demand thing. And we want to reduce the demand. Now, if you're a supplier, then they're going to go after you, right? But if they have certain things, that they can do for people that treatment is very difficult. The numbers, the statistics for alcoholics and addicts and things like that are they can get better. They certainly can with more community awareness, less stigma. Recovery can or cannot be anonymous. We have a lot of celebrities and even our elect, even our sciences. We have a lot of, and that doesn't necessarily make you, I was going to say special, but it's just unique or different. And I'm not going to get into the whole recovery, the psychology and alcoholism. That's the thing about it. I think it was Carol, or maybe it was Moore, that was said that alcoholism calls foul, or the legalization of alcohol calls foul to some of those things. So it's good that we're looking at, I think maybe even I would be open for the discussion. Let's say MDMA was, I believe it was legal in the 80s for marriage counseling. So imagine if there was like a resort or something you could go to, or in a controlled environment, wasn't very sterile or laboratory, or type setting to a certain age and extent. Maybe if you're having marital problems or whatever, you could, there'd be like a doctor on call. Maybe that would help. Maybe there's some trauma. There are some benefits. Maybe a lesser form of MDMA. We all remember what happened. I'm 43 this year, so we know what happened in the late 90s when they controlled everything, the chemicals that make these substances. So when you started getting TMA and PMA and things like that, bathroom ecstasy, people were dying. If you took like 2 pure ecstasy, it's like 6 doses, and you would sort of. But again, I'm not a doctor. So, and that's what really this is about, is legislators being a representative, is listening to these facts, to these doctors, to these scientists and things like that, and be able to balance that law and that representation. And and the way things are set up now, there's a large disconnect with our legislators. So I advocate for the Digital Democracy Project. You want to be able to get someone on their best judgment. Do you really know? I mean, come on, look at the incumbent Don Beyer. You know what I mean? He's going with the money. He's going back to school. And during office and all these things. His judgment is not it's not there for the best interest. It just isn't. And a lot of them are like this. And my cat just opened my back door all on by himself. But I think Zoom and this mic, please don't do that, can isolate just my voice. I mean, it's pretty loud to me. So thanks, Bruce. Thanks. It's a really sweet boy. He really is. So yeah, and that's some of the positive. Yeah, that was a nice thread that I was able to go through, and some of the things in the IRA. You know what I mean? Like, you really dig into that Inflation Reduction Act, and you see the lobbying profile, and you see how it had no direct reduction of inflation at the time that it was passed or introduced, and you wonder why they even named it that. Even Biden himself wished that he had named it that, and you just have to wonder. Again, like, just all week they come. That's like, it's like he just wanted to show that they did something, and that's great. But don't sugarcoat it with us. You know what I mean? If that came through my desk, like, look, you guys. Well, again, it kind of throws in the analogy, the variable where I'm trying to push this American Anti-Corruption Act, and I'm going to have to. Things were lobbied, even if I wasn't directly lobbied, and it works like that now. Then I'm going to have to sign off on something. The important thing is that I'm communicating with my district about it. But again, with that Inflation Reduction Act, it's just look at it more and more, and you see on how the incumbent posted something today about how 3.4 million benefited from some of the tax credits. 3.4 million households benefited from some of the tax credits for solar panels and things like that. Well, there are 227 million households. What is that like? I'm just coming off the top of my head. Was it 3 or 4 out of 100? So wherever you are in country or city, 3 or 4 people out of 100 are going to benefit from this law. So again, just sugarcoating it like that, and that at least it's something. But again, when you see some of the 2,094 different unique organizations had their hand in the Inflation Reduction Act, consumer spending, the price gap. You know what I mean? Corporate America had to make up for losses, and they jacked up the prices. We kept buying And that is what created jobs. That's what got everything back. It wasn't the Inflation Reduction Act. And they don't say that, and again, this is a guy coming from the left admitting to this, because look at the data. So I hope again the right would see that too, that there's things that we can do, even things that you're being fed on the right. Just because I'm being objective to the things on the left doesn't mean that I'm going to automatically support things on the right. Depends on what it is. Is it constitutional? Like I said, I'm thinking constitutionally when it comes to the ban on assault weapons. If it's not in guns and ammo, okay, how's that? I think that's pretty reasonable. You're not going to see a rocket launcher on there. I mean, there's regulations, and that's fair. Most people, you know what I mean. It's sport. And I mean, we don't have again, for special circumstances here in the city. We might be able to. You just can't discharge one here. Maybe have limitations on ammo, possession of ammo in a city. We'd have to talk about these things. There are a lot of people in my district that mean right. I looked at the numbers versus the registered Republicans and those that actually voted in the previous election. It just looks like they didn't vote, or maybe they voted for I doubt it, but this was really cool when I went out there and I canvassed and I was able to talk to people at farmers markets and then at the end a little bit on my own, door to door, and just kind of get people's feedbacks and to really and learn as I went along, with what I knew. And it's part of anything. I mean, a parent would tell you that, you know what I mean? But there's certain principles that I have, and so I can always learn relatively quickly with whatever new issue that it might be. So, and that's how I've always been. I mean, lots of us are like that. You know what I mean? It's not it's just we're all tired of it, left and right. I'd like to go ahead and make an example of some of the negativity that I've had. I'm not going to share my screen on this, but Sharon Berry, you know what I mean? She's just got a lot of resentment and generalizations, and then she automatically assumes that no matter how many times I've tried to explain this to her, just continues to do with that. And it's like, just, you got to get over that. You know what I mean? I will hold Kamala Harris accountable, especially when it comes to the climate crisis. You know what I mean? You have with that IRA, you want to tout that this is helping the climate crisis when also we're still the world's largest oil producer. That's an international challenge. And I get it. In some ways, we have to put the chicken first before the egg. We have to put more electric vehicles out on the road. And we just can't displace CO2 into the atmosphere. It's pretty basic chemistry when we think about it like that. If the Earth is an egg or a bubble, it's very simple to understand that. And they're right, some of the things that they're just feeding because they don't want to change. It's very dangerous. It's mind numbing. We're the only country in the world, where half of us, or at least close to it, actually subscribe that climate crisis is not a crisis. So just half of those in the US know better, or have you been fed some corporate bullshit, just like some of us on the left have with other stuff? Think about it, okay? So another is this Lucy character. She misunderstood my position on a federal minimum of protection for abortion. And that all the while she's, advocating for fetal viability, which isn't even the VA state law, which is trimester. You know what I mean? That opens up the conversation. I heard Trump say something about how, he's kind of if you've seen that Wolf Blitzer article where he said he waffled with he never really answers a question directly, where it's he in some ways he's a Democrat, and the Democrats we've definitely had good economies, should be that way, but same thing Republicans, but not really. So, and maybe direct, where exactly are we Democrat from, right? But when he said something recently about abortion and how circumstances of rape, incest, and the mother's health, well, here in Virginia, if that was a state law, then what if a woman got pregnant from rape or incest, didn't want to keep the kid, and didn't want to report it for whatever reason? Actually, I mean, idealistically assume that every woman would, I've sat in court before, I've heard things, there's some, but the way that the law here in the Commonwealth of Virginia is, they will pursue, if they know that there's rape or incest, they're going to pursue regardless of, they will subpoena you. You know what I mean? That's just how the Commonwealth does. If you get into a fist fight around here, and regardless of like who started it, like on the street, they're probably going to arrest both of them. Yeah, yeah. No matter who threw the first punch, they'll look at it. I mean, that's kind of the way the Commonwealth is. Maybe if it's like in your home, it's a domestic, just, but again, like just imagine what that's like for a woman. You know, I would imagine that being pregnant in its own regard is like being trapped in a way, but you have that choice. I mean, can you imagine if the law forced that on you to hold that child for whatever reason, arbitrary reason that they came up with? And then so much if, let's say, the mom may or may not have known the dad, and then they have to establish paternity, and then a man would have to pay child support when the law forced that life. And if you do some digging, even the Supreme Court has refused to answer if fetuses have constitutional rights. And the only real way to look at that legally, not spiritually, legally, is with a birth certificate and social security number. That's what, as soon as you cut the cord, you know what I mean? I think it's beautiful in some cultures in Africa. They name the child as soon as the mom is pregnant. A lot of women know when they're pregnant right away. They can just tell. And that's the birthday. But that's Africa. And that's a spiritual thing, just listening to it, right? But I think Bruce brought in a bug that he's chasing. So, anyways, I mean, that's just something to consider when it comes to rape, incest, and distractions. Mother's health. And that's what the third trimester law is set up. That's how it's set up here in Virginia. The mother's health. You know what I mean? Like, let's say theoretically, you know, she's due in 2 weeks, but she decides she doesn't want it, they'll probably make you deliver it and then give it up for abortion or something like that. I don't know, I'm not a doctor, you know what I mean? Like, they would weigh those things out, and that is the law. And again, we're talking about 7% of abortions in 2020. 93% of abortions were undergone medically within the first trimester. So again, it's that hype that they get in your head. And by the way, it's not mentioned in the Bible, and it was conducted even in those times, the biblical times. Abortion is a natural thing that a mom chooses. You know what I mean? And so it's really, you're gonna have to wake up to that fact. And that's just the way that it is. So yeah, with all that being said, let's actually be civil with unity, not some foxhole prayer because of what happened to Trump in Pennsylvania. Let's actually unify constitutionally. If it is constitutional per Amendment 2 to have a firearm, certain firearms, including assault weapons, then it would also be constitutional for a woman to have an abortion per Amendment 1. You can't, I see what people on the right are doing with that Amendment 1. They're just interpreting it in a way, and there's like two parts to it. It's like you can have your freedom of religion, but we also don't have to make any laws for it. And they're just going with half of it, not the full, thing about it. You know what I mean? It's like, I was raised Catholic. I like to look at things. The whole truth and nothing but the truth is like a full circle, 12 months, right? 12 months, 12 jurors, 12 disciples. And you're doing half of that, that's 6, right? So think about that. A person can have an abortion and totally, to the higher power of their own understanding, make right with it in their own way. And it's none of your business. It's like, if you think it's just playing that game endlessly for the last 50 years, she's playing God and then you're playing God, making her want to have a kid, just let it go. I don't know. I hope that more people will take what I'm saying with rescinding the ban of assault weapons or the abortion rights more seriously. And that really doesn't have too much to do with lobbying. Sure, with guns and stuff, maybe even with medicine and things like that too, and how we're going to pay for it. And again, we're talking about outside that first trimester having an abortion, 7%. So I went over some of the IRA flim flam, as I saw once on a Wall Street Journal article. I like to use the media bias charts. It's free to use. It's developed by a company called Eponymous Media outside of Colorado. And you can see where these organizations, the mainstream media, and even like you can see where Tucker Carlson, it's just misleading, misinformed, and the guy is just sitting there like perplexed by everything. You know what I mean? And it's pretty bad. It causes a lot of disillusionment. You saw they fired him. They played him as the fall guy for the election, the big lie thing. And then people still watch him and they still get down there and they still think what he's saying is true, or the people that come on there and things like that. This media bias chart was developed by an attorney, a patent attorney, with the principal of balance and just looking at it methodically. Go check out the website and see how they rate the news. Even with people that are inclined, staff that are inclined to vote on the right. So that's why I love the Wall Street Journal, because they rank very well. Anything objective to the left's certain policies, I will go and check that out. But you have to mind it. It could be an opinion article or something like that. Sometimes opinion isn't always facts. Sometimes it's kind of right there. And that's the thing about opinion versus fact, especially when it comes to political science, when we're dealing with our intangible future. You know what I mean? There's nothing more. I'm a pretty reasonably intelligent person and understand physics and mechanics and things that we can build with our hands and see it and things that are tangible. But when it comes to political science, we're dealing with people's minds. And that is the most dense object in the known cosmos. There's more activity, there's more matter in the human brain than anything else. There's more activity going on than uranium or iron, or just in one little thing than any other life form or anything that we know of. And we're talking here as Americans, we're talking about moving forward with it, and trying to get each other to agree on what is constitutional, what we believe to be is constitutional. So it's so complicated, it's interesting. You know what I mean? And I get bored pretty easy. But this stuff is, it's satisfying. I know that I'm really trying to unify with these things. I would like to make a deal with the viewers of this live stream where I don't really. Oh, I wanted to open the show up with asking for donations, and this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna come up with a video, and I'm gonna circulate it on my own with how much I can afford on a weekly basis. If you've ever boosted a post, you can target it. Facebook is the most cost effective. I really don't mess with Twitter's thing, and where I don't know, 20, $50, something like that. But what I'm gonna do is within the next week or two, I'll share my screen. You can see this video that I'm going to do. And if it's out of the 15,000 something viewers that I presently have, or even more than that, if you just send a couple dollars, you send something like that, and where I could use that money to boost this post, where it's really getting this incumbent out of the way, working with some of the other independents. The guy who was on here before, he said some reasonable points. There's the mainstream media, and then talk with your friends. Well, use that media bias chart too. Really look at it. Just because there's things on the right doesn't make them invalid. Same thing with the left. And that's what's so cool about this media bias chart. It's one of my favorite tools that I discovered about 4 years ago. Independently, I saw this and I was like, media bias. You know what I mean? And then boom, there it is. It's pretty simple to go and do that. And it's I come from intellectual property law too, been doing it 15 years, and just clicked. And then just lots of things that I've been working on, they just click. Right. So I've got about 6 minutes or so. Make sure. There's also a T-shirt that I have. It's J6 RF. It's a J6 retribution, from kind of like an ideology. You have to think about this, where I like to think that Trump faked a staged Matthew 21:12 reenactment on J6. You remember Matthew 21:12 is when Jesus had cast away the doves, or selling doves. I'm not doing a good job explaining what Matthew 21:12 was, but he went in there into the synagogue and he kicked their asses, right? Because they were buying and selling. And you can kind of look at that as not everyone at J6 was a rioter, but it clearly was. And that's the thing about it. I've been in conversations where they just want to completely say, no, the entire thing is peaceful. No, it wasn't. By the numbers, probably more people were, but some people committed crimes, you know what I mean? And they just believed that Trump would drain the swamp, and he didn't. So if you want to know what that looks like, what draining the swamp actually looks like, it's that American Anti-Corruption Act. It's been endorsed. It was developed by a former FEC chairman. Constitutional scholars have professed by it. Has Princeton studies, Represent Us, even celebrities like Jennifer Lawrence and Michael Douglas. I like Michael Douglas. I just saw Wall Street, Money Never Sleeps again last night. Clearly he's on the right. It's during the Bush administration, just before Obama was elected. But then he's done the American president. Clearly he's on the left. So it's really cool. But here he is in real form on Represent Us, and with Jennifer Lawrence and others. explaining what the problems are and promoting this model package. And not just that, also banning stock trades, and that's making movement. So our incumbent here is one of the most prolific of all of them, including Rokana. It's see here I am on the left here, and you have to. I'll say it was the third time. Look at capitaltrades.com. Look at opensecrets.com. Look at what your representatives on the right are doing. So even Nancy Pelosi, Rokana, geez, Don Beyer, and it just drowns out the voice. It drowns out the voice. We want to get the money out, and take a look at Represent Us. It's a nonpartisan organization, and it's cool. So let's make that deal in a couple weeks. If you like what you see in this video, send me a couple dollars, as much as you can. The limit is 3,000, just so I can boost this post. I'm going on Tuesday to a caucus here with the Young Arlington Democrats. It just was an invite. I've done it before. And I'm just going to sit back and listen and maybe ask a question or two. One question I was thinking is Wall Street's already donated to Kamala Harris. She has to respond to them. So to keep her circulation around, we don't know what goes on behind the scenes with what, you know what I mean? But they're listening. There's a really cool, what is it? The CEO of Wall Street Journal had said where the markets are going financially. And you can tell, I would say that if you were to put him he'd be like on the right, but more towards the middle where he's talking, he's kind of seeding this intentionally where, he doesn't have any problems with the rainbow, the people of the rainbow or anything like that. So that's neat. This is Wall Street. So again, I'm not necessarily saying that any money that Harris has received is inherently negative. I'm just saying that that's the idea, is when they donate, when they do these bundles of PACs and super PACs and things like that, you have to answer to them. And they're not going to be like right up in front. They're just going to stop sending you money. And people as they work around and stuff, and they'll just, so you're either being true to that or the people themselves, and I heard Kamala's positions on the economy and things like that. And it's probably just going to be an inch forward of anything. But when we got things like the climate crisis and cost of things, if we don't mitigate that corporate influence, it's going to get bad. The cost of things because of climate change is going to go bad. Not talking about how to protect jobs from AI, it's going to get bad. Our incumbent is studying it right now. Even if it's just a class a week, comes out to, it was like 540 hours or something like that. He has a 17% political efficacy on top of all the other campaign that he's doing. And they just leave these little patchworks and they think that we're going to be okay with it. And anyone that says anything about it is nixed or disgruntled or just not going with the herd. Think about that. You know what I mean? The psychology of it. We started a little bit late, and I've got about a minute. One last thing, Israel. There's some things developing on that. We have to remember original Washingtonian creed when it came to temporary alliances. It's going to get a little messy. We want to keep the area stabilized, things like that. That I understand. But as we move forward from that, hopefully there's not some big scale thing where we're sending more and more money and defending Israel for things that are just not our business. And in some ways they are, post-World War II, et cetera. Temporary alliances was what George Washington stood for. That's where he was in his farewell address. Permanent alliances, just you're going to get just to appease general empathy or whatever it might be, corporate influence or something. So I'm gonna go ahead and close with that. I'm gonna work on that video. Hopefully, I can get this incumbent out of the way and really work together with people on the right. So with that, I'm gonna go ahead and close and say good night.